Cool.
Good morning, everybody that's coming into the room right now. Hopefully you can see myself and Jacques on screen, and you can hear us as well. If we're all coming through loud and clear, please do pop something in the chat box for us. Tell us where you are and confirm that you can hear and see before we get started. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We're just going to give people a minute or so to come into the room. Thank you, Jenny. I hope the sun's shining in Sussex. Great. Thank you, everybody. Glad we're all working and people coming in from all corners of the UK, which is excellent. So as I say, we'll just give people another 30 seconds or so, and we will get started. Let me get my slides up, ready to go. Oh, good old HMRC. Oh, where's my slides? Here we go. So I think we will get started. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're delighted with the turnout this morning. Who'd have thought so many people would be so interested in the joys of onboarding and anti-money laundering? If you are anything like me, you'll know that this is a real administrative burden that's placed on us. And anything that can help us automate and improve the way that we go through this part of the onboarding process is incredibly valuable. And I hope that what we're going to share with you this morning will give you some options to take away some of that pain. So for those that don't know me, my name is Will Farnell. As well as being founder of Farnell Clark, I'm co-founder of App Advisory Plus, and I'm delighted this morning that I'm joined by Jacques Malan. Jack and I have known each other for a little while through some of the work that Jacques has done with some of the software vendors around Xero and QBO integrations. But Jacques, do you want to give us a brief introduction, who you are, and why you're joining us this morning?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Jacques Malan. I'm director at Xama Technologies. As Will says, we've been doing some work for quite some time in the sort of accounting and fintech space. We've worked with vendors like Soldo to provide them with Xero integrations, QuickBook integrations, and as we've built projects for other vendors, we've come across various issues, and we've started to build our own applications. And the onboarding solutions that we will be presenting today is sort of a product of that, where we recognized the problem and tried to build a solution that can be available for the wider community. We come from an accounting background, so our company was born out of an accounting firm. And so our solutions are very much focused on accountants and trying to streamline some of the issues that we've seen for accountants. So yeah, happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jacques. So a couple of housekeeping points. We are due to finish by 10:45. So I will do my utmost to bring us in on time. We'd love questions, so do pop any questions into the Q&A box. We have time at the end, and given the nature of the topic we're discussing, I have absolutely no doubt that there will be questions, particularly for Jacques as we go through. So very briefly, the agenda or our outputs are that first of all, we can identify some ways for you to automate AML onboarding from a signed proposal. So whether you're using Practice Ignition, whether you're using Go Proposal, or indeed if you're not using any proposal software at the moment, what do you do once a client has signed a proposal? How do you start that process of going through the onboarding, particularly around this very administrative burden that is AML in terms of getting information from clients, physically keying data in to carry out the AML checks and so on. And most importantly, and I've seen this quite a bit with firms that I've worked with, in terms of how do you keep on top of AML, and we've got enough to do anyway without having to kind of try and keep up to date with what the laws are around what we should be doing in terms of managing compliance risk, making assumptions about the amount of AML work we have to do based on the risk of the clients that we're taking on. So looking at ways that Xama will help you ensure that you're maintaining that AML compliance on an ongoing and recurring basis. And finally, how do you make sure that you're remaining GDPR compliant whilst you're still meeting your AML obligations? So that's the plan. That's what we're going to talk about. I'm sure we're going to cover much more than that as well. And Jacques is going to give a demo of Xama so you can see practically how it works. Because the thing is, we talk about onboarding, and onboarding is a very broad topic. So in our firm, onboarding lasts 3 months. So we take on a new client and we work with them for the first 3 months. So it's really important that we focus on the bit we're talking about today, because it's such a broad topic. So Jacques, what are we talking about? So we're talking about onboarding here. In terms of the work that you've done with Xama, what bit of that process are we focused on?
Yeah, sure. Let me just take over the screen. Yeah, very much so. We want to be clear about what it is that we're talking about today. And very much it's about the compliance part of the onboarding journey. And what does that typically relate to? That is generally once you've onboarded a company or a person to your organization, you need to request some further information from that for that company. And typically that is, who are the directors, who are the major shareholders, who are the people of interest for which you need to do further checks on. And those can be running a company report, so having a look at whether that company has any county court judgments, what their credit rating is. But it's also about requesting personal details from those people of interest. So typically, when you're running an anti-money laundering check, you need somebody's home address, which isn't easy to come by unless you ask for them. So it's about what is the process of fetching or collecting that information. Then finally, it's actually running the necessary checks using that information. And typically for accounting practices, that relates to gathering an identity document, making sure that that identity document is real, it's not it hasn't been tampered with, and then also doing an anti-money laundering check on those people in order to be compliant.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jacques. And certainly the conversations that we had in kind of preparing for this webinar is I was kind of trying to understand, where does this fit between the kind of proposal software that people might be using in terms of Go Proposal Practice Ignition, and the bit that data starts going into your practice management solution, whether it's Center Accountancy Manager or whatever, that also do some of the AML stuff within their platforms. And I think where we got to is really that this is about doing the heavy admin lifting bit, isn't it, between those two steps of the process. And certainly as we go through, you're going to kind of demonstrate how that works. But how did you get to this? What made you go and build a solution to kind of piece these bits together? What was the inspiration? What was the driver for it?
Yeah, so I mean, we, as most of our products come to light, we worked with an existing accounting firm, and they basically came to us with the problem of integrating this onboarding process into their current business process. And when we started looking at this problem, we realized there's a whole bunch of issues that goes with this, and they're not that easy to solve. And you can sort of break it down into these different challenges. Collecting the information in a secure way. The information that we deal with is very sensitive personal information. and then being able to validate that information. How do we actually make sure that the information that we're gathering is correct? And then the process of then taking that information and going to type that into some sort of platform to do an AML check. That's typically a manual data transfer of information from one place to another, receiving that checks and then entering that checks or the results of those checks back into your CRM system or a sheet that you may keep. That's again manual transfer, heavy lifting. And then a big part of it was also, that's fine to onboard somebody initially and making sure that customer is not a risk. But you also have an obligation to remain compliant and to keep carrying out checks on your client base in order to make sure you highlight where any of those clients may have become a risk.
Yeah.
And what we found was that really, because it's such a heavy lifting manual admin job, it either doesn't get done very well, or it's just a box ticking exercise. And that's where we sort of got to decide, how are we going to solve this problem? And what we actually found is that the problem isn't cheap or easy to solve. And we worked with this accounting firm to bring a product to light for them, but really ended up spending a lot of time and a lot of effort to build a platform which we could then present to the wider community to take away some of these barriers that we found exists. And so that's where we are today. And we've solved this. We've tried to solve, or we have solved all of these issues in a way by building this platform that we're on. And just to sort of go through each one of these and just give you a bit of an overview of what our product or what our platform provides, is that in terms of collecting information, we have smart onboarding journeys, which I'll come to within the demo and explain a little bit more about, but gathering information securely. And then we link into partners, which I'll also talk a little bit more about later on, in terms of validating the information that people are giving to you. Compliance checks, we have various partners to which we connect to, which we run AML checks on. And then very importantly for us was we take an integration first approach. So we're not an app that you have to access, not another CRM tool, not another onboarding tool that you would need to implement or understand. Our approach to this was always, you have your systems in place, you have your business processes in place. So we want to integrate into those existing business processes so that you don't have to adopt something else. It's all about making your existing processes run more smoothly rather than introducing new ones. And then remaining compliant. Our platform deals with those kind of issues, making sure checks are completed automatically going into the future. And so once you have somebody onboarded, once somebody's on the platform, you don't have to worry about those customers going into the future. What we found is if you automate and streamline all of this process, you can go look at how do you actually add value to your business. How can you run reports, etc., around managing your risk, managing your compliance, and it's not a box ticking exercise anymore. You can actually engage in the process and see where it can add value. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what the challenges were and sort of how we aim to solve it.
Yeah, and I think we you, just by seeing some of the challenges there, you realise that it's those pain points that we have in terms of chasing the client for the information, making sure we've got the right information, keying the data into whatever the system is that you're using to physically do the AML checks, and then that ongoing bit of making sure that it's still correct, relevant, and up to date. And I think that's the nice thing that you've highlighted there, is that this isn't about you doing AML checks, you're providing the links and the connectors between the existing systems that organizations have got in place to just streamline that admin heavy lifting that we talked about. So who are the partners that you work with to kind of give an idea of where this all kind of joins together, Jacques?
Yeah, so importantly, what I've mentioned is we are not the partner who will be performing the AML checks or verifying the identity documents. We're essentially a platform which brings all of this nicely together and integrate that into your system. So that's the solution we provide. And what's part of this platform? What does it facilitate? We do identity document capture. You validate identity documents and you can extract all the information out of there. And our partner for that is GBG as well. And they're also our partner for anti-money laundering checks. And then we also partner with CreditSafe for their extensive company credit reports. You get a lot of information from Companies House, but these credit reports give you credit ratings. It would highlight county court judgments against companies, and it gives you a vast amount of other information about a company that you can access. And I'll show you a bit of an example of their reports later on. We also link with them for director reports, so you can see more about a director, which previous companies they've been involved in. And then the platform has also been used for consumer credit checks. TransUnion is our partner for doing those. And then we also have PEP and sanctions monitoring capabilities with C6 Securus. And we've also added into our onboarding platform the ability to set up mandates. So we're very much extending as we grow our onboarding journey, not to just relate to compliance, but have as few as possible sort of touch points with your customer so that they can complete those things. But as I'll also demonstrate, these are what you use is very flexible in terms of what you want to do with the platform. So those are our main partners. It keeps expanding as we come across new requirements from customers, and our platform is got a very standardized open API, which you can use to link into all of this information which we gather from different partners.
Great, excellent. And I think you're going to tee up effectively a demo for us now in terms of getting into some detail about how the platform works, what the process is for the client, and so on. So carry on, Jacques.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll try to keep this quite brief and clear. And what I'm going to take you through is this is just a recap of the original slide, and it's just basically we're going to go through this process of requesting company information, running a credit report on them, then requesting more information about the directors of that company, and then I'm going to just show you how automatically we run those identity and AML checks on those people that we've gathered the information from. And as I mentioned, we're not an app, so I'm not going to log into my app. I'm going to use an example here where we connect our platform with some other applications to demonstrate how you can streamline that process. And briefly, how that's going to work is we're going to start off by accepting a proposal from Practice Ignition. You can also trigger the start of this process various other ways, new contact in Xero or Go Proposal or whatever system you use. We use Zapier in this example. We've got a Zapier application, so you can use Zapier application to connect our platform to various systems. And for today, I'm going to show you all that information being gathered into a Google Sheet. In order to gather information from about directors and shareholders, I'm going to use a simple Google form. And then we're going to start the process by which we send out a link to our smart onboarding journeys to every director and shareholder from that company. And once those directors and shareholders have completed that onboarding journey, I'm going to show you how that information is then processed by our platform and then pushed back into the Google Sheet. And then having all that information to hand, you can then run your analytics and reports across that and have a dashboard essentially of your onboarding process. So let me get into that then, so you can see exactly how that works. So I'm going to just hide. And the Google Sheet that we're going to look at is very simply something set up like this, which has got a bit of a dashboard about how your onboarding process is working. Obviously, this is your Google Sheet. You could build your own dashboards and reports on top of that. But the way we're going to start this process is to look for new proposals. So I've got a sheet here which basically looks as new proposals come forward. I've just prepared one from Practice Ignition. I've sent myself a proposal, and I'm just going to accept this proposal from Practice Ignition to start off the whole process. And as I'm going through this, you'll sort of recognize that everything that I'm doing on behalf of your customer. So it's a fully automated, customer-led process where, as the administrator or as the accountant, you don't have to do anything as part of this process. You've sent out the proposal, and as the customer, I'm accepting that proposal. As I'm accepting that proposal, you can see the Zapier application has basically recognized that, and it's brought in a new record of a proposal being accepted, and that's going to kick off the process. And automatically, this will generate an email to that customer who's accepted the proposal to gather more information from them. As I mentioned on the introduction to this, you can see that we've got a link here sent by Zapier, and this will take us to a Google form. And this is pre-filled with some of that information that we've already extracted from Practice Ignition. And all I'm asking for here is a company registration number. And I'm just going to add our company's registration number in here. And it's going to ask me more information about the shareholders and directors of your company. I'm going to add in just one more person in here, and I'll do an example with 2 directors and shareholders.
Jacques Malan's just asked if we can make the screen any bigger. I don't know whether there's any way you can make your screen any larger, zoom it in a bit. Fab.
Yeah, thank you. That works a little better.
Yeah, thanks.
So I've based a real email address. So I'm going to add 2 directors and shareholders. I'm going to say I don't want any more. and we'll submit that information. So now we've pretty much got to the point where we have who we want to contact for gathering more personal information and for doing our identity document checks and AML checks. If I go to my company sheet in here, you can see in this line, we've now got the company and also the company registration number. And you can see actually already Zapier has picked up that we've got a new company in here, and it's already run a credit rating report on this company. Thankfully, we're low risk. It's got the credit score there. And also what we've set up here is that this credit score will be updated automatically every 360 days. So every 360 days, we'll get a new updated version of this credit report, and we'll be able to see what our previous credit report was, what our current one is, and you can sort of monitor where there's potentially a low risk person who's moved into a higher risk category. We can also pull director and shareholders information into here. That's part of it, but also what I'll show you towards the end of the demo is we also have a link here which will take you to a page where you would be able to see much more information about this company. For now, we're just pulling in some key points which we are interested in. The other checks then that we would like to do is to see what is the situation with the directors that we've gotten in. So here you can see those two directors that I've just entered has made its way into this sheet. And at the moment, it says that the request has been sent. So I would expect that I would have received another email. And this is where we're going to start engaging with our platform and smart onboarding journeys. So if I go back into my inbox, you'll see I've received, as one of the directors and shareholders, I've received an email to say, we want to gather more information, follow this link. These emails, all of this stuff is completely customizable. You can put in your own message and make it your own essentially through the configuration. So if I click on this link, it's going to now take us into what we call the smart onboarding journey. Just saying a little bit more about this, basically taking somebody through a wizard. And this wizard that we're going to go through, we can configure. So I'm going to gather within this wizard a person's home address, and I'm going to gather some identity documents.
And again, just to kind of reconfirm here as well, Jack, you're the client here, aren't you, as well? So this is what the client is seeing, the client's doing. So what we're almost kind of self-service AML here, aren't we?
Exactly. I mean, all I'm doing when I'm viewing this sheet is this is what you would view as the accountant, but everything else around this is just being done by the customer, and every step of the way is sort of automated.
Perfect.
So these onboarding journeys, I might make this a little bit bigger again. It's quite simple. It's meant to work quite well on a phone. I'm doing this on a laptop, so it's a little bit, but you'll also see that it's very mobile friendly, especially when it comes to capturing identity documents. And in here, we're basically, like I said, just asking for a personal home address. So I'm going to just put that in here. It's going to look that up. It's going to pre-fill my address on here. Once I've submitted that, it's going to ask me for an identity document. What I wanted to say about smart journeys, this is not necessarily something that you you would want to do. You can just ask for a home address if you wanted to, but I've defined this to do both of these actions, which are typically what you need as an accountant. You can choose which one: passport, driver's license. If I choose driver's license, it'll ask me for a front side and a back side of the document. I'm just going to do my passport. And just for the sake or the public nature of this webinar, I will use a smudged out version of my passport. Obviously, that'll return some pretty bad results, but you can see I've just sort of smudged out any of the personal information within this document. As I said, if it's on a phone, very easy to take a picture of your driver's license or your passport at this point. When it's on the laptop, you just upload a scan copy. And when I click upload, this is essentially uploading this document to one of our partners, to the ID scan from GBG. And if I just go quickly back to this sheet, because the results come back pretty quickly, you can sort of see how that information is already feeding back into our sheet. So what's happened is it's looked at our ID document. It's not a surprise that the ID document type is unknown because I've erased a lot of the information. You can see a previous one that I did. It recognized it as a passport if it's obviously a real copy. It's populated back the information about my address that I filled in, and it's also done an AML check on that information already for me. It's pushed back all of that information into the sheet automatically. As an accountant, I've not done anything at this point. I've just accepted, or person has just accepted the proposal, and then they automatically receive this our emails, and they've completed this information. Again, when we look at these kind of things, all of our reports that we generate have the ability to periodically update that information. So my AML results here is a pass at the moment, but every 360 days, that will refresh and we will get an updated result as part of that. That's also configurable. If you don't want to automatically do that, then that's not necessary. And then importantly, again, we're only bringing back top level information here. So this is just to make sure that you have a good overview of what's happening with your onboarding process. The important
zoom in again, Jack.
Right.
Can you zoom in again, just so we make that all a bit clearer?
Yeah, sure. Let me.
Great, thanks.
Right, so you have here basically my name, and then here is the AML result, which comes back as a pass. The other options around that is a refer or an alert. But generally, especially if you're doing a submission including somebody's passport number, then you typically get a good match and a pass solution. So what I just wanted to show is this is sort of the high level stuff. This doesn't give you a lot of information quite clearly, but it does give you the overview of what you basically need to know. However, at the back of this and what you have access to is much more information. And when I was talking about the company reports, you get access to report data, which is, again, this is small. So let me just see if I can make it bigger. But this is basically, when I was saying we're linking in with partners, this is the credit safe company report that comes back. And here you can see I've pulled out the credit rating and whether it's low risk or not. But you can see the amount of information that we're bringing back is quite significant. So that number you can't get from Companies House that easily. And then just really quite a lot of information. If there was any CCJs, you can look at what those CCJs are and see what kind of risk levels you're dealing with. And the list goes on in terms of the information in here, your shareholders, your directors, and then some more information about what the financial position is of that company. So really a lot of information here that's on top of what you would also get from company to house. On the identity document checks side, you get something similar. So we get the pass results. So we get say, okay, this is a not supported document, a passport or a driver's license. But on here, you can then go and you can view the image of what has been scanned in. This doesn't give us a lot of information because it's a smudged out copy of my passport. But you'll see that it basically does an authentication report, and it will look at all the different elements of the document. It'll extract your date of birth, all the address, passport numbers. All of that information are displayed in here, and it gives you a whole lot of information, which if you're interested, I can, in a more private setup, I can share much more information around this. Clearly, we deal with a lot of personal information. Security is sort of our number one concern. So yeah, so that's pretty much what we have. And basically on the sheet now, that information feeds through back onto your dashboard, and you can sort of have an overview of how your onboarding process is going. Low risk, how many has passed, how many unsupported documents have you got, and then you can go into your sheets and investigate further if you need to. But typically, you see very good pass rates with the partners that we use. And still, as the accountant in this sort of demo, I've not done anything from my side. I've just collected the information in a completely customer-led situation. So yeah, that's hopefully, yeah, a pretty brief demo. Well,
excellent.
You can take back over.
Great. I shall just bring some slides back up here for us to wrap up. So I think the key thing here, Jacques, from what we've just been through, is that this is about streamlining the admin process for firms here in terms of removing that kind of administrative burden, things like putting the power to the customer to be able to kind of do this stuff for us in the background. So if you think about how much time we spend chasing information from clients, getting copies of passports and ID, verifying them, keying them in, and that's really the crux of what we're doing here. So this next slide is really just about for people that want to know a bit more. How do they get started here? I mean, I'll pull all this up and you can just kind of talk us through the process here. But where do people go to kind of get access to this technology?
Yeah, so if you're interested to connect with us, or go to our website, just fill in at the moment there's a very brief form that you can fill out to request an account. Sometime next week, you're going to have there'll be a more automated process to create that account. Importantly, from our perspective, is our platform is basically free from our side. And you start using, or you start paying just for what you use. So there's no long-term commitments. Come around, try it out. But we do certainly recommend getting some initial support, and that's why we're working with App Advisory Plus as well, to get you set up and running. It's a very quick and easy process. We've designed this exactly for the reason to support smaller companies. So the cost, we don't want to put in a barrier of cost, but we do suggest that you get that initial support to make sure it's working for you.
And I think the key point here really, Jacques, as well, isn't it, that this is designed in a way that it's built to fit the existing processes that firms have. So it can be adapted based on the technology that you're already using. And I guess it's possible to create alerts almost, so you perhaps don't even need to look at that spreadsheet, because you can trigger alerts to say this client has completed this step of the onboarding process and so on. And certainly in terms of the work that we're going to be doing, or Rowan particularly is going to be doing with Xama Tech, is being able to come in and build those integration processes and steps. And just to give people an indication, that starts from about £250 just to build that initial setup, so that the system will then work, and then to use the technology. You work on a credits basis, and each credit is 50p. And there's bulk discounts, but broadly these are the different elements in terms of how the credits are deployed. So if you want an AML check, it's going to cost you about £2 per check. Anything else you want to say on this pricing piece, Jacques, before we go to some questions?
No, just really that we try to keep it as straightforward as possible. One hopefully big advantage that we also offer is the sort of pay-as-you-go model. What we've seen before is that people subscribe to one of these services and they need to commit to a 1 year or 2 year big commitment. There's nothing like that on our side. You can use it as long as you want, and then you can also stop using it. So but hopefully, obviously, that's not the case, but you don't have that sort of long-term commitment. You buy 2,000 credits and you end up using 500 of them. So you should, with us, just pay for what you're actually using.
Yeah, great. So should we take a look at some questions? I can see we've got a bunch here. Right. So first question: are we reliant on the client identifying all shareholders, or is there a check to ensure completeness? So I guess what the question here is, Jacques, is if somebody says they've got 2 shareholders and they've actually got 4, is there a way of kind of validating that with any third-party record, company's house, or is that still unfortunately one of those manual steps?
At the moment, what we have in place is when you do a company check, you bring back a lot of information about those directors and shareholders. So you can check against what you've extracted from that company report. You can check that to what the client has fed back to you. But at the moment, we are expecting the client to give us that information. You can certainly just run a check on that. One of our future, and we won't commit to any sort of timelines on that, but is to make that process a little bit more slick. So when you're updating a company, it'll automatically be bringing in the relevant people. Let's say you specify shareholders that's got more than 25% in the business. Certainly going forward, we're going to expand more on this project or on the product to make those kind of things more slick as well. But at the moment, you need to gather that information from the client.
Yep.
In this particular process. Yeah.
Okay, next one. Does the passport checking software check that the picture has not been tampered with? So obviously it able to flag that there was a potential issue with your passport because data was blurred out. I mean, obviously this is a third-party process here, but how robust is it in terms of that kind of ID validation?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could show you all the checks that it does, but it certainly checks for digital tampering, whether something has been altered with Photoshop, those kind of things. It does a list of must be 100 different checks that it does in terms of verification. And certainly digital tampering is one of them amongst many other checks, for sure.
Great. Excellent. So we're plowing through them. Good for you. It's good to see questions. So what about doing the risk assessment form checks for clients? So I guess this is that we talked about this briefly, Jacques, in terms of assessing the potential risk profile of a client beyond kind of the straightforward kind of AML checks, in terms of identifying that they're in a high risk country or they're in a high risk industry.
Yeah, so at the moment we haven't got any let's say predefined engine or something that pops out an overall risk score for that person. However, we've got all of the information available to you in order for you to set up your own sort of risk profile. So the data that sits behind this is extremely comprehensive. And as we are developing this going forward, we would be including some of those risk profiles into the product. But again, that's sort of depending on how requirements come up for us in order to.
Yeah. And again, I guess because we're effective as flexibility in terms of how you build this, and because it's using Zapier and various Google Sheets, whatever the approach is, that there's nothing to stop you building as part of the implementation, identifying what the things are you're trying to achieve and building that into the process anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know that this is really just a very basic demonstration. We can connect into various different systems. Zapier, most people know, connects into 2,000 different applications. So the way you can set this up and the way you can integrate this into your existing process is basically endless.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a pretty standard, something sort of out of the box that people could.
Yep, great. Next one, because I'm conscious of time, so rattle through these. Is the onboarding sheet set up for you, or do you have to create it yourself? I guess, again, this is part of the implementation, isn't it? So if we as App Advisory Plus were doing the implementation, we would set up that Google Sheet, Excel document, whatever it is you're using to enable that workflow.
Exactly. I mean, this is available for everybody to use. We are happy to share this kind of things, but certainly we do recommend just a couple of hours here and there to make it work for you. It'll save you a lot of time to use somebody like App Advisory to get this set up for you.
Great. Excellent. Next one. Do you need clients' permission to run credit checks? So firstly, you don't have to run the credit check, do you? That's a choice in terms of how you set the process up. And I guess you've got to do AML to a point. You've got to do identification validation, and you might be using products to do that already. So certainly my answer to you on that question is as part of your engagement letters or whatever, have something in there that makes the client aware that you need to validate their ID, and whether you choose to do a credit check is down to individual choice.
Yeah, importantly, we in this example, we're not running individual consumer credit checks. Certainly, if you're using consumer credit checks, that's a different ball game, and there you do need more permissions. That was a bit of TransUnion I pushed up. We do that, but for AML and company credit checks, that's not as it doesn't leave a footprint.
Yeah. And of course, because you're using forms to collect the data, you can include a tick box in the form to get consent, I would assume anyway.
Yeah.
Patrick, your next question, do we have to pay anything for GBG credit safe? That's all done via the credits. So you're buying your credits at 50p per credit, and each step of the process utilizes a set number of credits.
Yeah, there's no commercial agreement between you and GBG or Credit Safe if you're buying the credits from us. If you already have a GBG or Credit Safe account, you can still use our platform, but that's a bit of a different commercial agreement. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Two more, unless anybody throws any more in before we wrap up. How about proof of address? Can this be added in? Also, does it automatically send reminders if they haven't responded? So if you've sent a form to a client and they haven't responded, I guess you can set reminders to email reminders or resend the form.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as we've shown here, it's all set up via Zapier, so it's very possible to build in that reminder functionality within Zapier. We also, in the sheet, it brings back that link. So this is essentially the link that we send out. So you can also copy that link, and you can just send somebody that link to say, please, make sure you're completing this. So there's more than one way to build that reminder functionality into the process, for sure.
Great. And the final question, how does it work with Go Cardless?
Yeah, so go cardless. Essentially, that's where the smart onboarding journey comes in. When I showed you that address and passport check on there, you can adjust that onboarding journey. And basically, at the end of the onboarding journey, the person is directed to go cardless to set up a mandate. And you can then, and it creates that mandate within Go Cardless, and you can pull that information about that mandate back into a spreadsheet or whatever. It doesn't sort of then obviously create the automated link between that customer in Xero and Go Cardless or whatever, but you get that Go Cardless mandate created within Go Cardless. Happy to set up a demo on that afterwards.
Right. Excellent. So one more that appeared in the chat. Where do the documents sit? The credit report, submitted passport, etc. That's all. It looked from the demo that's all in Google Drive. But I guess again, you can set up links to push that direct into your document management system and so on via Zapier where that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we are releasing in this coming week. We're releasing a portal for our customers where you can log in. You'll be able to view your reports and you'll be able to download the documents from within that portal. So you can see we've got a link that comes back. That link will take you into our portal and you'll be able to view it there. But our API also allows you to download that document. So you could also extract the document via the API and push that back into your CRM system or put it into Google Docs. That's all possible through the platform's API. Probably the way this will be set up is you click on that link, you go to your portal, it takes you straight to the page where you can see much more information about that report, both in sort of a JSON format, but also download the PDF links that relates to those reports.
Great, excellent. We have got through all of the questions. So thank you ever so much indeed, Jacques, for sharing that. If anybody has any questions at all about how the system works, implementation, and so on, do drop either Jacques or us at App Advisory Plus a line. Thank you very much indeed for taking almost an hour out of your morning to join us. We hope it's useful. I know firsthand the pain of dealing with this admin process of AML. So hopefully this gives you a glimmer of hope and some solutions to streamline and automate that and ultimately deliver better experience for your clients in terms of giving them a far more straightforward approach to providing you the information you need. Do get in touch with us with any questions. We're going to circulate a recording of the session, so that will be with you over the next 24 hours or so. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Jacques, for joining us this morning, and do get in touch with any questions. Have a great day, everybody. Take care now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.